Okay, here we go. Oops, wrong button. Want to make sure I am recording, not stopping the recording. Okay. Welcome to It's Your Choice podcast. Today on the show, we have Charley Johnson. Thank you, Charley, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Charley, what is a chief consciousness officer?
I like to immediately talk about what it's not. It is not a part of the wellness program, right? So immediately people hear consciousness. They think spirituality, they think wellness, they think everything that's been going on for the last 20 years. The
Mhm.
meditation, the yoga, the Tai Chi, the mindfulness, all the wellness programs, which are great. They should not stop. The chief consciousness officer is an individual that's going to bring the ability for everyone to level up consciously through their mind, through their potential, through whatever they choose across the entire company, across every level of employee. Everything is consciousness. Everything we've known, every tool we've only used the mind. The mind is the middleman. The mind is that middleman that has created all the issues on the planet. And
Oh,
if you remember
yes.
Einstein saying the same mind that creates the problem can't solve them, right?
Mhm.
So the problems have always been the same. They've changed people because of generations. We live, we die. They've changed individuals. They've changed political parties. They've changed religions. They've changed leaves on the tree. But the root of basically every problem since the beginning of humanity has been the same: division, conflict. My side's better than yours. I'm a Republican. You're a Democrat. My God's better than yours. Catholic, atheist. Constant division because the tool we've been given only knows division. It only knows this or that. It only knows if it flips a coin, it has to be heads or tails. My question has always been, where did the coin come from? Where did Catholicism and atheism come from? Where did Republican and Democrat come from? So the chief consciousness officer is going to bring a clarity to every individual in this organization, a clarity that will help the CEO with strategy, a clarity that will help the marketing officer be more creative, come up with ideas they haven't thought of, and on and on and on, all the way down to customer service. It's an individual that doesn't consult. It's an individual that's in the trenches with everyone in the company day in and day out.
How many companies right now are working or aware of this thought of having a person come in as consciousness officer? My thought is because, as you said, a lot of people will think about what it's not, all the
Mm-hmm.
wellness
Mm-hmm.
programs, the
Mm-hmm.
HR department, all of
Mm-hmm.
that. And so, how do we go about, I guess, educating people about the difference and getting them to agree and take on somebody and let alone the right person for that role?
People like you. This is education right here. This many hosts have admitted that they would have not had me on as soon as 3 months ago. So if you
Wow.
look at the shift of consciousness on this planet, because that's what this is a shift humanity's never been through. We
Mhm.
have proven that when humans are left to their own devices, meaning we think we're going to advance, we're going to get better, we're going to fix this, we see the world we've created. Luckily, and I try to keep this as simple as possible, the invisible force that is pushing everything up, kind of like turning an 11-year-old 12, right? We didn't need a teacher. We didn't need our mind. We just naturally 365 days later turned 12. That invisible force is consciousness. It's
Mhm.
rising like no one's ever participated in or experienced it with humanity. When people say, well, how do you know that? My question is, well, look at the world. How does it look? It looks very chaotic. We as humans love
Mm.
safety and security. Would we have chosen this? No. This is this natural shift that's pushing everything, and before creation comes destruction. So, luckily, that shift is something that needs to be discussed because it allows everyone to start to understand that everything happening on this planet, everything they are physically and non physically, their mind, their thoughts, is consciousness. So, thanks to you and many other hosts in the last 4 to 6 weeks, having these discussions where we go into depth in 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes of what it is, what it's not, help them understand it's not spiritual, help them understand that it's tactical, help them understand that I have a business background, 20 years business owning, 250 employees. I have a nonprofit background. I have time with a very enlightened teacher. So I have a very unique set of skills to let them know I'm not coming at this from I'm going to walk into the company and have everyone meditate. They're already doing that. Okay.
Right.
And my question to that always is, the wellness program's been there for 20 years. How's it doing? How does the world look? How do
Mhm.
the companies look? Some are good, some are not so good. But everyone in the C-suite and every employee would agree that the division between employees and executives has widened.
Mm.
The division between political parties has widened. The division between religions and other groups, it doesn't matter, has widened. As that widens, the conflict grows, the division grows, the fear grows, which causes the chaos that we see in the world. So it's not about proving it right or wrong. It's just simple. What are you experiencing yourself on the news, at work, with your family? And 99% would agree with what I just said.
Well, I mean, it's a fight in a way and a challenge. You're right that consciousness is changing and it's moving faster, thankfully, and better than we've ever seen in history. And I think some of that though is also with some aspects of it is we're starting to see some scientific research, or not even starting to,
Mm-hmm.
but it's becoming more to light
Yes.
and people are
Yes.
more accepting it. Before it was like, oh, maybe that's a one-off or it's
Mm-hmm.
pseudoscience or,
Mm-hmm.
all these things. But after I follow, and I was recently earlier this year at a workshop with Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Dispenza, and
Mm-hmm.
it was very interesting. And he said, like when he started 40 years ago, like people thought he was crazy and thought that this
Yes.
stuff was ridiculous. And now, after years and years and years of scientific studies and proof and things, he's like, it can't be ignored anymore
Mm-mm.
because it's not just one, two, five things. It's been so many. And that the conscious mind and the subconscious, that when we look at it, we have to think like these are all choices that we make. And sometimes we make choices without realizing really what we're doing because our subconscious mind is making choices for us. But then also, too, a lot that I've learned through a lot of travel that I do is my thoughts and beliefs are not correct. They're not right. They're not wrong either. They are only mine because of everything I've been taught, told, and experienced, where I
Yes.
live, how I lived. And I've
Yes.
said to people, if I was taken, or if you were taken at a child at 2, 3 years old and moved
Mm-hmm.
to a foreign country on the other side of the world, different language, different religion, different everything, all of your thoughts
Everything
and
would be
beliefs would
different.
be different too.
Yeah.
So who's right and who's wrong? Well, neither. It's neither. And it's knowing that. And I think what we really need to move is to open conversations and understanding my thoughts and beliefs are not right. They are not wrong. They are
Mm-hmm.
true to me, but just me, because it's only my truth. They're not true to the world.
You summed it up perfectly. I always use that example. If Utah, very Mormon, Texas, very Baptist, very Catholic. If a Utah family had a kid and that kid was adopted his family from day one, he'd have an accent. He'd be Baptist, and he would be what a Texan is. Just like if that kid from Texas was born and raised in Utah or Japan, whatever. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful example, and helping the vast majority of the planet understand what you just said, as simple as you said it, is still quite difficult, right?
Yes.
So what has been going on with these interviews is to bring more of a business angle so we can talk their lingo, so we can talk about how it's tactical, so we can talk about, in a simple sense, clarity,
Mhm.
customer service clarity, middle management clarity, VP, C-suite, CEO. It doesn't clarity. Do you want clarity? You are here, we will
Blinders
take
on.
you here. Okay.
Mhm.
That very simply is, it doesn't matter if you
Mhm.
go from second to third grade. For a CEO who doesn't understand consciousness, even if we talk about the fish and water type of analogy, or something simple like you said, if a chief consciousness officer would very simply and very quickly take everyone in the organization from let's say they're in fourth grade to fifth or sixth. If I was a CEO and I was hiring, would you want to hire fourth graders or sixth graders? The sixth
Sixth graders.
graders, yeah, the sixth graders are a little bit more self sustaining. They're a little bit more emotionally intelligent. They can communicate
Mhm,
better. They're
mhm.
emotionally stable. They're a little bit smarter with math. They can understand computer. They just have 2 more years. That's what a chief consciousness officer would do. And the other thing that's, did you ever see that movie called The Cooler with William H. Macy?
I don't think so, no.
Vegas has done this, but it was a movie about the theory of this, but they actually do it. If a craps table is doing really well or someone's doing really well on the blackjack table, they would bring in William H. Macy. Very low energy. And
I've heard
just,
about that. Yeah,
okay,
I've
so
heard.
he would
Now that you
see,
mention that, now I'm just like, oh, I've heard. I haven't seen the movie, but I've heard about that.
so a cooler to bring the winnings down, to bring the
Mhm.
energy of the table down, to help the casino not lose is cooler. A CCO, as more and more people start to understand consciousness, even at a very simple level, brings everything up. It's the power of a very neutral, undivided consciousness is just engulfing this whole room. When you walk into a meeting, if you're in a wherever you're at, you're going to bring everyone up in the room. You're going to subtly bring their consciousness up, their clarity up, and their division down just by being in the room. Because we have this vast resource, and every time we learn, we're taught, we're Republican or Democrat, Catholic or atheist. This is right. This is wrong. This is my ethics. It's not your. We have limited ourselves to our mind, this little box that's overwhelmed. It's full. It's packed. And that consciousness is only getting funneled through this tiny little thing. When you
Right.
have a neutral consciousness, and I don't have someone, a true chief consciousness officer would be incredibly unbiased, unconditioned, and neutral. They would not have a dog in the fight. When they asked if they were in a meeting and Susie and Ed got at each other's throats again because one's Democrat, one's Republican. And after the meeting, I went up and asked Ed and Susie individually just how they got to their views. Once they understood the position and got to know me a little bit better, they would know I'm not asking from a sense of, are you for me or against me? I'm not asking from, how do I get this person fired or how can I tell I'm the CEO for this? I'm truly asking from a neutral standpoint. So I can say, Ed, I know Susie's driving you crazy, but you do realize Susie is driven crazy by you as well. You guys are the heads and tails of the coin. I'm not there. That position's not there in an authoritative way to change their views. Because what am I going to change it to? I'm not changing from one side to the next. Just to simply bring the awareness of that. Now, the
Hmm.
seed's been planted. They're not going to change their mind. They're not going to change their opinion. They're not going to change sides. But the seed's planted. The universe is the best gardener ever. It'll slowly water that. And in a subtle fourth to fifth grade, there will be less division and less conflict. This position will also help HR. They won't threaten HR. They will help HR hire individuals who maybe have a little bit more clarity, or maybe a hire will come in and they're just perfect. They look like gold on paper. And you get to meet them, you're like, oh man, that person's they're not gonna thrive within this team. Doesn't mean they're wrong, but I'm just
Hmm.
telling you that person's not going to work well. Or someone who comes in with a weak resume, and you'd be like, well, that person is going to be a perfect complement to the individuals who are already there.
Right.
They're a little bit more, they're lighter soul, they're kinder, they're sweet. I know they didn't show you in the HR meeting or the interview. They didn't really bring that confidence and that power. I know that's what you're looking for, but what you're looking for is what you want, your conditioning, and it hasn't worked out too well.
Mhm.
Just simple, subtle shifts. The CEO, just boom, boom. They're going to have more strategies. They're going to have access to answers and solutions that only came in front of them right here. Now it's going to be more expanded. And that's where, again, these interviews are so important because it's a simple 30-minute, 40-minute education for more people, your audience, to hear it. They may be executives, VPs, they may be business owners. It's starting to get into the collective. So more people will at least know about it. And then someone will take the plunge soon. And once they do, other companies will wonder what they're missing out on and then do the same thing.
Right. Right. And I think too, for me anyway, some of the best conversations I've had with people is when we have different beliefs, thoughts, political, religious backgrounds and everything. And I love to ask people, why do you think that? And I don't, and I'm totally respectful asking. It's like, well, why do you think that? And well, yeah, a good amount of times I get the, well, because it's true, because it's right. And I think,
Hmm.
oh, and I just say, okay. I'm like, oh,
Yep.
okay. But then every now and then one will say, well, because ABC, whatever it could be, their experience, their life, how they grew up, things that happened to them. And I'd
Hmm.
be like, interesting. And I would say, well, I believe, and it's usually the opposite, or it doesn't have to be complete opposite, but differently. And I believe that because this XYZ, or have you thought about this? And we can actually have an open conversation about it. And it's never intent to change mind, but it's
Yep.
just about understanding. And at the end, most times I say, we'll still agree to disagree because I can't change, or I'm not willing to change my belief or thought because this was my experience. However, if I had your experience, if that happened to me or whatever it may have been, I would absolutely believe or think what you do. And it makes sense
Hmm.
to me. And I can
Yes.
just understand. And I think we used to have these conversations like
Hmm.
decades ago, many, many
Yes.
decades ago. We used to,
Yes.
and they became less and less because it's either you agree with absolutely everything I say, or even one thing you disagree, and you're now the enemy, which I think is ridiculous. I have one of my best friends, even just a couple days ago, we were talking politics. And for the most part, we would say we are politically different. However, there's so many parts of it that were the same. Or
Hmm.
we talk and we'll be like, well, so and so said this. Or the great thing is now with a clip. Did you see this clip? And we both do it. Like, did you see this clip? Did you? And we'll both go
Hmm.
back. Well, what was the whole thing? What was the context of
Hmm.
this? My interpretation is this. You say, well, my interpretation is that. And then
Hmm.
we have to think, okay, well, and there's been many times that both say, I need to look into that a little bit more because sometimes it is just our interpretation. And at the end, she's like, great conversation. I love having these conversations with you
Hmm.
because we're still friends. And
Yeah.
even though we're different, we know that we're different. There's things that we completely disagree on, and there's things that we realize there's a lot of gray in the middle, and there's awareness and understanding. And she grew up very differently than I did. So she grew up communist Poland, was born there, came to Canada as a young child. So her whole upbringing and background completely different of mine, where I was
Hmm.
born in Canada. My father immigrated as a very young child um, from the Netherlands. So completely different backgrounds, but still just open to conversation.
Well, I've heard that about a half a dozen times now, 100%. We used to be able to agree to disagree, right?
Right.
Okay, well, here's why. As things come up, everything you've ever suppressed comes up. A
Mhm.
decade, 2 decades, 3 decades ago, we were really good at lying to ourselves and really good at suppressing and really good at looking at each other and saying, hey, we're just going to agree to get disagree. Now, if we're friends, no big deal. If we have a conversation at a party, those conversations were being had. How we really felt, and you've been to dispense this thing, it's an energy. That
Mm.
energy permeates out into wars, into conflicts, into, hey, wait a minute, I thought we were going to agree to disagree. So what's happening over these past decades is as the veil thins, as consciousness has slowly risen, and now in the last year, it is just skyrocketing. When we have that legit feeling that we were able to suppress and not feel and not deal with, now it's coming up and we have doubts. What do we do when we have doubts? We should open ourselves up and ask different questions and be okay to change. Do you know anybody
Mhm.
like that? I'm not like that. Usually, what happens when that doubt comes up, we have fear. And when we have fear, we double down. Now we're digging our heels in. And
Mm.
everything I've known as Republican, there's no way in God's name am I going to change now. And that agreeing to disagree is now becoming more difficult. That's why there's more conflict and division than ever, because we've always felt this way. This is not new, but we had the ability to suppress, not deal with, and not have to think about that. Now the universe naturally pushes it up because you know as well as I do, and you're probably your listeners as well. To let something go, it has to be present. You have to be aware of your weaknesses. You have to be aware of your bias, your conditioning, your ignorance to something to finally be like, holy shit, I might be wrong, rather than I am right, you're wrong, but I'm going to agree to disagree. All of those conversations were being had. And yes, they were fine. We can't, with the bullshit meter and the clarity of individuals has skyrocketed because of consciousness. And now everyone fears that their side's going to lose. And when you do that, whether you're an athlete in politics, anything, you double down, you back off, you really, you park the bus when it comes to soccer. You start playing a ton of defense. I'm right. I'm right. I'm right. I'm right. I'm going to double down on Jesus. I'm going to double down on Republican. I'm going to double down on my ideas. That agree to disagree has been thrown out the window, and it's all part of the process. But the breaking point's coming. It's probably already there, and people are going to be made aware that both sides have a considerable amount of ignorance. Both sides are going to be made aware that this is all about consciousness. They've always been consciousness. More scientists are going to talk about it. They're going to start to really understand that consciousness is fundamental to our experience and our reality. If that happens, I mean, when that happens, people are going to want to know more what that means. A chief consciousness officer would be on staff to answer any question anyone had at any time. That to me, just like when technology took over a company, over business, and they needed to hire CTOs, the next logical hire is a chief consciousness officer, because 30 years ago, no one knew what a URL or coding or a website or an internet was, but they knew it was going to be big.
Right.
Same thing right here. Consciousness has always been there, but it's just going to expand, and more people are going to realize this was a middleman. The source was consciousness. By God, I want to know what that means.
Where do you think we need it most? Or because it's kind of everywhere, and it might be a bit of a double-edged sword question of where do you think the most impact would be in what industries starting to having that consciousness themselves, whether they get a chief consciousness officer or not, but just that awareness.
Every industry. What I think the question should be is it better to leak it in like a consultant and do? I think we've been doing enough of that. Conscious capitalism, conscious leaders, conscious transformation. They're all over LinkedIn, right? I don't think that's enough. A week here, a month here, a consultation here, paying. It needs to be Trojan horsed in. You need to have someone on staff in there all day, every day, in meetings, traveling, at the watering hole with customer service, because that has not happened. That is the next logical step. And every industry needs it. People always say, well, consciousness, we'll go to Silicon Valley, the technology. Sure, that's fine. But what about manufacturing? What about tech? I mean, every industry needs this, because
Right.
every industry, it has access already to consciousness. It's like I say that we've all had a blank business, and companies have all had a blank check, and they've cashed it for $100. It, why why would you not cash that for like a trillion, or like a
Hmm.
leave a blank and just do whatever you want it, because that's what consciousness is.
Right.
uh, to single out a certain industry, no. I just, I'm hoping, and thanks to individuals like you, I'm hoping that more CEOs and executives hear it from all industries, and they just at least have a conversation with me, or at least take the plunge and just see like, how is that going to hurt? It can't.
Mm.
It can't. They're going to wonder how they ever dealt without it. Just like a chief technology officer, it's going to be a big deal.
So, how would somebody go about hiring a chief consciousness officer? And even, I guess, even before that, what do they look for to know that they're hiring the right person, or at least on the right path to get the right person?
So, with this being so brand new, and talking about this, and basically being the only individual talking about this right now, I wouldn't want them to be spiritual. I would want them to have a understanding of spirituality, to have had some time with a teacher like me, but I want them to have a business background. So they're not a
Mhm.
spiritual individual who comes in and wants to take down profit and capitalism and thinks money's for the birds, because that's just the heads and tails of the coin, right? The, those
Right.
those two worlds need to be bridged. They need to have a business background. They need to understand how to talk to everyone at every level. They need to have, would be great to have a nonprofit background as well to see the difference between profit and nonprofit. But I would like the individual to have time like I've had with a very unique high level teacher that understands consciousness and the ability to merge those three together. And I know there's individuals out there. The way you discuss this, I've never met you before. The way you discuss
Mm.
your thoughts, the way you discuss consciousness, the way you discuss your ability to talk, you would be a perfect candidate for that. And there's more individuals out there. Now, because we're talking about this more, many people have come to me and say, I would be a perfect fit for that. And I'm looking at them saying, no, you wouldn't. No, because it's not about being heart centered. It's not about all love and it's all peace and it's meditation. We have done that for 20 years.
Right.
Typical business people, it's like you're talking French to them and they don't understand French. And even the mindfulness stuff, as neutral as that can be, with those wellness programs, you have an incredible amount of Catholics and religious people that look to meditation and mindfulness as Buddhism, and they're completely turned off. Those wellness programs could be the devil to them. I know that
Right.
sounds insane or childish, but I can promise you there's a considerable amount of people who believe that. So that individual will have neutrality
Hmm.
and they will have clarity and the ability to see an individual very quickly where they're at consciously so that you can discuss with them at their level, meet them at where they're at to help them go from fifth to sixth grade, to help them go from junior high to high school, to help a high school person go into college. You know, it's not just an all encompassing, this is an employee. HR is kind of handcuffed with legality. Um,
Hmm.
well, every individual in the company is because they're not going to understand the neutrality and the consciousness like I do, like a position like mine would. This is this is this is to me is the next logical step in hiring. And I'm just going off my own experience with my business background, my time with my teacher. I didn't take off and go meditate in the Himalayas. We need to bring these worlds together because look at how much division and conflict, and we've tried everything else. So we've got to bring consciousness in a way that everyone can participate in because everyone is consciousness. Not a wellness program, not meditation, not
Right.
mindfulness, not a Catholic thinking it's Buddhism. Like consciousness is neutral. I've
Hmm.
never said one thing about being religion, spiritual, neutral. I'll meet you anywhere you want to meet. You're Catholic, you're atheist, you're Republican, you're Democrat. No dog in the fight. That position has no dog in the fight. And that's a very powerful place to be for anyone who wants to talk to him.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree, and it's definitely something that we need and do need it everywhere. So, Charlie, if people wanted more information, maybe wanted to have a conversation with you, where is the best place for them to find you?
I'll give you my LinkedIn. I like to get people there because when I post, it's basically like a live feed of how this position helps C-suite, how it how it doesn't compete with HR and marketing, how it's a secret there's just constant posts and constant conversations of what this position is, and I like them to go to LinkedIn so they can just reach out. They can talk to me and see if it's right for their company, right for them as an individual, but they can also see how other people are interacting. And the biggest thing is they can see what it is and what it's not.
Right. And I will make sure that I have the link for your LinkedIn in the show notes for everybody. And Charlie, I just want to say thank you very much for your time today. It's a conversation we need to be having more of and more
Mm-hmm.
knowledge about this getting out there. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for allowing more people to find out about the Chief Consciousness Officer.